Hello, and welcome to your weekly energy report for the week of the 5th through the 11th of April 2021. How are you doing? We are in the thick of Aries energy, as you have probably started to feel in yourself. There's a process of individuation that comes to the forefront at this particular time of year, but aside from the sun, we also have Venus, Chiron, Mercury just entered Aries. So we're talking about the manifestation of what we desire, the way that we process our emotions, and the way that we communicate, all converging in this very intense me energy. And, we've been so conditioned to think of me energy as being narcissistic in this, especially, I do think that the, without wanting to get into politics, having gone through the era of, really the entire decade of the 2010s, where we moved into this very, very coffee table psychology version of the self. Almost like cartoon characters, and quite grotesque when you really look back on it. Of course, we're very much in the thick of that, but of course this entire lockdown, pandemic, whatever you want to, however you want to perceive this last year, this really did come as a massive correction. We had not obviously seen the actual consequences of that in terms of how our culture is reshaped and how our, perhaps we have a better idea of how individually we have shifted. But now, this new astrological year, under the influence of Aries, is giving us the opportunity to sort of finally take all that inner self-analysis, that subconscious processing, and turn it into tangible, real experiences. So this is a time of experience, as we mentioned last week. The first decan of any season sign, signs season is what I meant to say, is about the self. It's the inner process. And then we move into the second, and that is externalizing that into experiences, into interconnectedness with our environment, with other people, relationships, essentially. And our reading appears to be all about that. And the very basis of that being shifting out of the societal conditioning that has kept us small in the past, moving into finding eventually our inner voice that defines everything about our outer experience. And the language spoken in this process is, I know it sounds like a giant cliche, but love with a capital L. Now, I don't know how that's going to manifest, but some of us may feel a little frisky, and some of us may feel just simply ready to re-experience the integration of emotional connectedness. There's been a sense of distrust that's been so prevalent in how we perceive life, and for obvious reasons. But I feel that it's time for us to move beyond that and to bridge those gaps and actually start embodying who we truly have become. Now, I did actually, I had a massage earlier today, and frankly, my brain is a little bit, it feels like it's got either too much oxygen in it or not enough. I'm not sure which. But I will do my very best to focus on our reading now. Because aside from the Aries elements, there's not a whole lot to talk about astrologically, aside from the fact that by the end of this week, we will have the new moon also in Aries. So that will really culminate in this individual push forward of our who we identify ourselves as. And it's harmonious. It's not who we are and how we're going to prove that to other people. It's we know who we are and we're ready to integrate that into our experiences, right? Okay, I'm gonna let the cards do some talking now because I honestly do feel as though it's almost as if, I let spirit speak, and I honestly feel that when I was pulling the cards earlier, I was very resistant because I was like, well, I don't really feel that alert. I don't really feel, it wasn't a lack of inspiration, it was more just a sense of being in the flow. And the message was, well, yeah, being in the flow will pretty much mean that you have to just, stop trying to plan and stop trying to find a narrative and just allow the cards to speak through you. The one thing that did keep happening while I was shuffling the cards is I had two love songs going through my head. The first actually has been going through my ears for about 3 or 4 days, and it's really probably embarrassing to share, but it's this quite sappy but enjoyable duet between Bryan Adams and Barbra Streisand called I Finally Found Someone. And maybe I'm just holding space for this reading by sharing that. But anyway, I am a sap, and I do like sappy songs. And the reason I mentioned singing is because our spirit animal oracle card of the week is Nightingale Spirit, with the subtitle of Love is All Around. And that was where I was singing because, I can't remember who originally sang it, but it was, I think it was a song from the 1960s. I don't remember who sang it, but this English Scottish band, Wet Wet Wet, sang Love is All Around in one of those terrible romantic comedies, Four Weddings and a Funeral, or whatever the other one, I don't know. I have to say it's really interesting. When I was growing up, my attachment to knowledge, specific examples of pop cultural knowledge was like really preeminent in my life. It was absolutely essential that I know everything and I could tell you the lyrics to every single song, and I still actually can. I knew chart positions of songs and whether how many $1 million of film had made at the box office, all that kind of stuff. You know, I was fascinated by that growing up, which I suppose explains why I live in Los Angeles. But the reason I'm telling that is that now I don't really hold space for a lot of that kind of stuff, which is why I can't tell you who originally sang it or what film the song was in. Was it Notting Hill? Was that it? Oh God, I don't know. I'm sure you really wanted to tune in just for that, but to hear me talk about trivial, terrible 90s movies. Where's my book? Shut up, Alex, shut up. Okay. Number 41, Nightingale Spirit. Do you want me to hold it up? I mean, I think you know what a nightingale looks like. But it is interesting that there's that little what is that called? What's it called? A phonogram? What is wrong with me? Oh my God. Remind me never ever to get a massage before I do my reading. It was very enjoyable, but honestly, my brain is just not working anymore. So, whatever it is, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, I can see Parlophone, like the record label, in my head because why can't I honestly, I'm like worried about myself right now. Okay, just read. Okay. Again, remember, if I put these things on display, maybe they're just a reflection of the energies of the time. Or I'm crazy. Okay. In the darkness of night, Nightingale Spirit sings her song of love and hope, a harbinger of dawn to remind you that the sun will rise again soon. You are so loved, and the illumination song of the Nightingale Spirit calls you to a new level of self-awareness and connection with the light. Yes, there is shadow and darkness, but love and prosperity exist everywhere, even in the seeming emptiness of space, darkness, and a starless night. Hearken to the message, letting the music of the Nightingale's song remind you that love is all around. Feel it and trust in tomorrow's light, renewing your ability to recognize that the spaces that appear empty are filled with love and abundance. Illumination will happen soon. I don't think I even need to read the protection message on that because I don't think that there is a energy of protection in this reading. It's all about openness. Interestingly, we did get a lot of time stamp energy in the reading. Again, I don't know what's going on with my Sacred Destiny Oracle cards, but when I shuffle them, multiple cards seem to always come out. This week we got 3 of them, and these came out together. They were Courage, Patience, that's the timestamp, and Embracing. And of course we had Patience as a prevalent theme last week. But as it was sandwiched between Courage and Embracing, what is the concept of that? The bridge between Courage and Embracing being Patience. I think that makes perfect sense. But we will read a little bit from the guidebook. Not the description, because honestly, I mean, yes, Courage, that's pretty intense, right? The way that that's depicted. I don't know why Courage never really strikes me as being so tumultuous, but something to take into consideration. Step forward, throw your shoulders back. That's probably to remind me to do that anyway. And stand up for yourself with passion. Speak up for those less fortunate. Be impeccable in all your actions. This isn't the time to be timid and pull back. Don't be limited by the beliefs of others. Use your passion to make a difference. Courage doesn't mean that you aren't afraid. Fearless means fear less. Acknowledge your fear and take action anyway. Make a stand. You are strong and powerful and have great valor within you. And I think it's interesting that this also is talking about not being limited by the beliefs of others. And you'll see in our reading that there is a strong emphasis on this individuation, separating from the conditioning. And it makes sense, from what we talked about in the last two readings. A lot of that was about letting go of trauma conditioning, no longer wanting to be defined by that. And, of course, beyond the desire, then we put that into action. And of course, once we drop all those old stories, there is no conditioning. And in fact, that can be a terrifying place momentarily, because it means that we find ourselves in a sort of nothingness where, we're so used to our world being restricted by definition and prescribed pathways that without those, there's an enormous sense of power, but when we find ourselves confronted with having power, we actually realize that for the vast majority of us, that's not a comfortable thing to hold. Because at the end of the day, real power is only over ourselves and our own destiny and our own path forward. It isn't about controlling other people. I mean, a bunch of wankers who run our countries and our corporations and our utilities and all that kind of infrastructural bullshit, those people in their authoritarianism have no concept of what real power is. But they're idiots, and we all know that. No secret on my channel, that's for sure. I certainly have plenty of what I would say. I think I reserve all of my disdain at this point for those morons. That's all I can come. I mean, actually, the weirdest thing is all that keeps coming into my head is the Hebrew word nudnik, which kind of means moron, I guess. And don't ask me why I'm telling you that. I'm not trying to brag that I know words in Hebrew. I know a lot of weird stuff that doesn't make sense. As do you, probably. Okay, Should I read? Well, I wanted to read Embracing. I didn't really want to read Patience, because Patience goes without saying, but maybe we will. You know what? Shut up, Alex, and just read it. Why are you trying to control things? Patience. You have patience. I can hear that you're already impatient. That's probably why I'm rambling and why we're 18 minutes into this and you're going where the fuck is the reading? Well, patience is a virtue. Patience is represented by dense fog. I really have to say that I did not get the sense from this picture that that was dense fog, but go figure. In dense fog, it's best to be quiet and still. For now, don't go forward. Wait, it's hard to see what lies ahead, and things may not be as they seem. Things that seem one way may, in fact, be completely different. Be patient. The truth will emerge. In this state of obscured visibility, your imagination and intuition can be sparked. If you can wait long enough, your dreams and inner yearnings can come to fruition. Listen to your intuition and pay attention to those seemingly random thoughts. And all that was going through as my seemingly random thoughts while I was reading that was, I hate the way that patience is conveyed as a human concept in this type of spiritual, esoteric jargon. Because why is patience portrayed as if it's something repressive and something of an obstacle? It's not. Patience means standing in our presence, going inwards, having a sense of purpose, but also understanding that we're poised for action at the right time. We might not be ready to act, but that doesn't mean that we don't have everything lined up to act, right? And seeing as there's so much of an emphasis on love, relationship, connection in this reading, maybe what it's more about is that, when we want to be close to people, when we want to connect with other people, we tend to jump the gun and have high expectations. I was actually talking about this to a friend of mine this week, where it's like basically, because we've had at this point in life, I'm talking from my perspective, where I'm like not that much of a spring chicken, I've had enough experience in life to have previous friendships, relationships that I can refer to as sort of time stamps on my own expectation. I should really be careful with that word, but it's probably what got me in trouble in the first place. But expectation of how things develop, what the time frame is, how long it takes, where we should be at, and if you're in that expectation, that mode of expectation, then of course you kind of spoil the ride because you're not allowing things to happen. You're projecting, how you have previously done something. And the reality is, if it didn't work out for you in the past, it's not by doing the same thing now that you're going to make any progress, right? So that's the message there, to reframe the patience card. It's about embracing patience, because that's what the next card is, right? Embracing. So let's hear what embracing does to put all this into context. Sometimes life overflows with emotions, which can feel uncomfortable. However, the ensuing result of this discomfort can be of great value, perhaps arising from an unseen or unknown source. You get this card when emotions are seemingly overflowing, or not flowing at all. Cherish the overflow of emotions and embrace the times that seem murky, for your inner floodplains are being replenished, and as a result, there will be great spiritual and physical expansion. The joke's on me, because I just literally said all of this in my own mumbo-jumbo way. So, oh well. And the joke's on you too, because it's your time. But I'm glad you're here. Embrace all your emotions. When you do so, greater prosperity and fertility will flow into your life. Alternatively, if your emotions have been blocked, this is the time to explore and experience them. And I did want to emphasize that, because I know for some of you, there'll be great resistance to the idea of it being about relationship, partly because some of you are very isolated, and partly because some of you are not really social beings outside of your pre-existing infrastructure, microcosm. But maybe this is a reminder to you that it's time to start allowing. In fact, that's all I'm going to say. It's time for you to start allowing. And what does that mean? Allowing is actually really the combination of all three of these. It's having courage, it's having patience, and it's embracing what comes your way. Now, this is spring, or, again, I just say this because one of the people that I love the most in the world lives in Australia and watches this, and she knows who she is, and she won't care if I'm talking about spring. It's the fall there, but it's also very warm where she is anyway, so she's flopping about on the beach probably right now, so we're not going to cry for her. I love you. But whatever it is, the shifts, shifting seasons, these in-between seasons, like that's basically how I see spring and fall. These are the most fertile, redefining periods in our annual structure, because they really do mark, the wheel of fortune, the shift, the wheel turning, either reaping the reward of what work we've already done, or opening ourselves up to the newness of possibility, right? So, and then interestingly, the card from the always perplexing Wisdom of the Oracle deck, and I really have to work on my embrace of this deck, because I don't know why I always struggle so much. And we've talked about it in the past, about the male versus female in it, and that it's a very female dominant deck. But this card is actually probably one of the more masculine cards. Tick-tock. And please do not misunderstand that. I am not encouraging you all to get on that absolutely dire, stupid social media platform. Tick-tock, number 30, is about timelessness and divine timing and immeasurable time. So again, here we go into that whole notion of, maybe what all this is about is embracing acceptance and being open. Take off the shackles of time, take off the shackles of expectation, which is a measure of time. It's time, pun intended, to unshackle ourselves in terms of, putting things off. We don't have anything to lose any longer. We really don't. I mean, first of all, I think we all have if we are going to speak in terms of time, we all have an acute awareness that we're living on borrowed time, right? So let's see how TikTok can give us a little bit of context on that. When humans created time, everything changed and contracted. That's true, right? It's so limiting. People have come to look at life in a linear way, imagining that the past is behind them and that the future ahead of them. But what if that isn't true at all? What if everything, creativity, beauty, chaos, and order were happening now in a glorious timelessness? And take a minute right now to think about what timelessness means to you, because that can be a huge clue as to how you're personally going to experience your leap into that great unknown. You have all the time in the world to co-create the life you desire, so release your agenda. Let go of your need to shape each moment to your expectations, knowing that what is yours will never be withheld from you. Miracles are here right now and always show up when you need them, right on time. Love, the fulfillment of desire, and even the body's reproductive cycles have their own timetable. Some things are preordained and cannot be coerced. Everything has its season, its divine and appropriate timing, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. Remember that you always have enough time for love, to find it, to nurture it, to give it, and receive it. Its clock is eternal and ticks according to the beating of your heart in perfect rhythm. Isn't that wonderful to know? Love is always right on time. Well, that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Interesting messages in the sense that we really are being directed into this correlation between timelessness or transcending those linear restrictions and love. Is there actually not an intrinsic co-creating force that exists between timelessness and love? I mean, if we think back to our youth, when the folly of love came, romantic love came probably much more easily, where we weren't so restricted by our experiences and our rejecting our own vulnerability, for fear of being rejected or being hurt or being conditioned by somebody else's trauma, that when we didn't have those things and we could be in that loose folly in our youth, which would represent timelessness, because when you're very young, you don't really have a concept of your own mortality or of time passing by. And what love is itself, and perhaps the only way to really find the love that you're looking for is to exist in a conscious rebuttal to the concept of time itself. Something to think about. It's probably a deeply metaphysical and intellectual journey that you will have to have with yourself, because I haven't really explored that for myself, and how I would perceive that is going to be conditioned by my own hang-ups and my own conditioning that I have to let go of. And mostly I've done that. Mostly I do feel like I transcend time as much as I can. And right now I do feel as well that, I feel like I'm the happiest that I've been in a while. I feel much lighter in many ways, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I have let go of expectations of a linear approach to my life. And as a result, I am aware of the ebb and flow of, my connection to time, but I'm not so hard on myself in terms of like how I perceive what I've done with my time. There's a sense of surrender in that, and the irony is that very often when we find ourselves in that state of surrender to our powerlessness over time, we usually find ourselves feeling busier than ever, and again, the resistance kicks in, because I've felt that myself. The resistance kicks in where it's just like, oh my God, like I don't have enough time to do everything that I want to do and that I need to do, and that's when I get stressed and worried. And when I abandon that, that's not an issue. So again, I'm just exploring those ideas with you. Maybe that's of some help to you as we navigate these Aries individuation energies. This is a fire season. This is bold and fierce and inspired and I want to say it's all gung-ho, it's just like full steam ahead, but at the same time in a frolicking childlike way, because Aries, it's a very young, youthful energy, and whether you're 10 or 80 watching this, or however you feel, maybe you've been feeling very old for a long period of time. Well, this is a season where you're going to find yourself like not being able to hold on to that definition of yourself any longer. You're going to actually, start smiling more and being like, oh, you know what? I actually feel a bounce in my stride, And if you're very young and, you're always, you always have boundless energy, then you're probably going to be able to harness that and turn that into something that brings you more joy, So that is the essence of Aries in many ways. It's the desire to be out in life as you. Okay, well, I guess I better get into the reading. Yes, that's true. So our underlying energies of the week. We got one Rider-Waite card, one Botticelli Tarot Clarifier, and one Osho Zen Tarot card to give us the general energies of the week to come. So we got the Lovers card, and of course the Lovers can be perceived as a relationship card, mostly in the sense of how we feel unified in our energy and flow with other people. And but the Lovers is, of course, more importantly from a metaphysical perspective, it is a concept of divine choice. And of course, I always say the same thing about this, which I hope is not too repetitive, but at the same time, I think it's really important to hammer home, in divine choice, this is the Lovers and the Devil are two sides of the same coin. The only difference is the Devil, there's an enchainment between these two people. It's their addictions, their codependency, their all of the destructive aspects that take away from the possibility of love, and the Lovers is the choice to move towards the divine practice of surrender to divine will, which ultimately will be the perfect choice for us, no matter what is on the table. And these people live in pursuit of godliness. They do not live in pursuit of ownership or convergence or becoming enmeshed and intertwined. You see that they're holding their hands out to each other, but at the same time not in a way where they're trying to become one, because that is not what love is. And that notion of the divine choice is also it's also a delineation of moving beyond a point of confusion. It's when we come to a place where we understand what it is that we actually are in pursuit of, which is a really beautiful place to be. And the clarifier on that was the Queen of Cups. So again, that reinforces that even further, because the Queen of Cups is the all-knowingness of our emotions. It's the divine feminine representation of emotional mastery. And emotional mastery from a divine feminine perspective is the embodiment of our emotions. It is not seeking control of our emotions. It is just being an observation of them and experiencing them with a knowingness that our emotions can never hurt us. They can only enlighten us. And how do we get there? Well, from the Osho Zen Tarot deck, we get the very interesting starter card for our reading, because you'll see when it's bookended with our conclusion card, when I eventually get there, probably in an hour or something. Achoo! Excuse me. Conditioning, which is the Devil card in the regular tarot. It's interesting, but we're gonna see what that means for us. And in this case, I guess I should hold it up for you, because it does always tell a story, doesn't it? Okay, so there you go. There's lions and sheep and who knows what else is going on there. I'm sure the card will explain. This card recalls an old Zen story about a lion who was brought up by sheep and who thought he was a sheep until an old lion captured him and took him to a pond where he showed him his own reflection. Many of us are like this lion. The image we have of ourselves comes not from our own direct experience, but from the opinion of others. A personality imposed from the outside replaces the individuality that could have grown from within. We become just another sheep in the herd, unable to move freely and unconscious of our own true identity. It's time to take a look at your own reflection in the pond and make a move to break out of whatever you have been conditioned by others to believe about yourself. Dance, run, jog, do gibberish, whatever is needed to wake up the sleeping lion within. Unless you drop your personality, you will not be able to find your individuality. Individuality is given by existence. Personality is imposed by society. Personality is social convenience. Society cannot tolerate individuality because individuality will not follow like a sheep. Individuality has the quality of the lion. The lion moves alone. The sheep are always in the crowd, hoping that being in the crowd will feel cozy. Being in the crowd, one feels more protected, secure. If somebody attacks, there is every possibility in a crowd to save yourself, but alone, only the lions move alone. And every one of you is born a lion, but the society goes on conditioning you, programming your mind as a sheep. It gives you a personality, a cozy personality, nice and very convenient and very obedient. Society wants slaves, not people who are absolutely dedicated to freedom. Society wants slaves because all the vested interests want obedience. And, of course, many of you may politicize that, given the current tides we are encountering. And I understand that, and we've talked about that. You know, we've moved beyond the resistance stage, so that's no longer about that. But this is perhaps actually the subtlety of the final hurdle of that resistance leaving, which is letting go of the conditioning. You know, there is nothing left to resist when you let go of the conditioning, and that requires courage and patience and embracing of the self, right? I'm just reminding you that that's what those cards were. Remember? Courage, patience, embracing. Because as soon as you do embrace the idiosyncrasies, your eccentricities, your individual needs, desires, the things that characterize you from your heart, not from here, not from how you want other people to perceive you, not in the sense that there can be some kind of validation if you look a certain way or feel a certain way or dress a certain way or speak a certain way, you know? It's your uniqueness that makes everything yours to experience and worth experiencing, right? So that's a big one, really. But it's very interesting because that's a very internal process that we're talking about in Aries season. So it's like, again, it's like all that work has been done and it's in there in our heart. And now it's just waiting to be expressed outwardly. And I saw it myself. I saw that shift in myself where in my work environment, with my relatively small but rich social environment, where I was just like, you know what? I don't care if who I am annoys other people. I don't care if I'm sometimes too loud, too boisterous, vulgar. I like to laugh, and I don't laugh at the expense of other people, but if somebody tries to present themselves too seriously, then I do tend to chip away at that, and I guess that, I've always been like that, the playful side of me probably can be a bit irritating to some people, but that's fundamentally who I am. So I'm giving you an example of something in me that I think is very positive. Some people don't necessarily appreciate it in the same way, and that's their problem. But what do you have in you that like maybe you've tended to repress because you've gotten negative feedback from other people about that because they want you to be a sheep. They don't want you to be a lion. Be the lion. You know, I'm a big old Leo, so I don't have any problem with that. But, you know, I have stifled that in myself from conditioning of the pain of experiences of rejection, of betrayal, of abuse, of and not just from other people, you know, towards myself. I've done those things to myself too. I mean, even being an acceptance of that from other people in relationships is a form of self-abuse. So we have to take our own, you know, accountability for those things. It really doesn't serve us to be blaming other people and like acting as though the problem's already always outside of us anyway, right? I mean, it's your life, it's your experience. The sooner we all take full responsibility for every choice and every action and every experience we've ever had, the easier it is to let go of conditioning. You know, as long as it's somebody else's fault, you're going to stay defined by that because you can't change them and you can't change the past. Okay, our past energy. It's good. I feel I've got my flow now. The post-massage brain has finally gone away. Okay, so what do we have in our past? Pretty heavy, actually, in our past, because we have the Seven of Cups, the Death card in reverse, and the Six of Swords. And all of them have Botticelli clarifiers on them, so I'm going to do those individually. So let's start with the Seven of Cups. You know, clarified by the Two of Pentacles. So this is two energies of ill-defined boundaries. This is about our desires being out of control and not being able to actually focus on what it is that we want because we're distracted, you know, probably caught up in the materialistic nightmare of the, you know, corporate hellhole, fascist society that our culture has sucked us into, and the Two of Pentacles being, you know, the juggling of the spiritual and the material and seeing them as two separate things and therefore spending your life like constantly with one foot in one door and out. You know what I'm trying to say. I don't know what I'm trying to say actually, but you know, a place of being very ungrounded in our existence in the outside world. Again, it's really important to remember that because those two cards basically are saying, you know, this is, you know, Pentacles are, you know, the outside world. Cups are usually our emotions. But if you look at this card and you think about the Seven of Cups, which, you know, this is a, it's looking for emotional fulfillment outside of ourself, right? And so that explains a lot. And I would imagine that that's really referring to everything that we've gone through in the pandemic and lockdown as to how we perceive those things. Because when we were deprived of our external existence, it obviously forced us to change, whether we were consciously aware of that or not. Even if it was just because we were completely terrified of everything, or I don't know what. I don't think anybody that's watching this was really like that terrified, because we've surrendered to spirit, so we understand that there's more to all of it than meets the eye. But anyway, the Death card in reverse really is stipulating that there came a point where there was a definitive and precise end to that lack of knowingness. And, you know, it's clarified by the Eight of Pentacles. So another material, external energy, but this one about craftsmanship, about ownership of talent, well, I should say management of talent, because we don't own our talents. But it's work. It's having a good sense of, it's like to step out of that unknowingness, of that ungroundedness, of that juggling energy into having a desire to actually do the work in order to evolve forward into something far more expansive and unknown. And that's exactly what the Six of Swords confirms, is that we've moved out of that. The journey out of that disarray, that confusion, that illusion of choice. Has taken us into, it's taken us away from chaos, turmoil, inner turmoil that in turn translated externally as a need for duality, right? And it was clarified by the Nine of Pentacles, the Nine of Pentacles being really about coming into a place. As we've moved away from the distraction of the outside world, we've come into an inner knowingness, which has given us a sense of inner satisfaction, a sense of inner purposefulness, of knowing that even if we don't receive validation for our hard work, let's not forget as well that that is a logical progression, that we go from the Eight of Pentacles, the hard work, to the Nine of Pentacles, reaping the rewards for ourselves, and not in a selfish way. Yes, these are, the Pentacles are the realm of the material, but at the same time, this is also, we don't get to this place of self-satisfaction, of inner satisfaction, without having worked very hard to get there. And because we're, all this is really about emotions, we have to integrate that. Again, let's not forget too that the Six of Swords is about, these are our, the ideas we have formed from our experiences. So we're taking these Six Swords with us because these are the ones that are worth at this very moment in time, that these three people, are like on their way to, a new horizon. They're taking those with them because those still serve them, right? In our present, we move into the really nice, swift Knight of Wands energy. And this is exactly the energy that I'm talking about. The inner knowingness then translates when we move out into the world, into this sort of buoyancy. It's like there's a real sense of, it was clarified by the Wheel of Fortune. And so this is a sea change in terms of how we are driven externally, how inspired we are in the things we do. And of course, as I said, the change of seasons generally does make us emotionally more open, more, either we're seeking warmth or we are, that's really what it is. We're seeking warmth. Whether that means that you need to seek warmth indoors or outdoors is a whole other thing. But, we're seeking that. So naturally, we're shifting the way that we communicate that inspired energy. And this is a big shift in us. I really do honestly see it. I felt it starting mid-week, of this last week, where there was just little hints and glimmers of the shine coming through of a personality that had perhaps been a little dulled from some consistent duress, right? And so there's some bounce in us, you know? Do you like the way I thrust my shoulders back when I say bounce? I have no idea what that is all about, but, you know, it's like bounce, you know? So feel that energy, see it in yourself, figure out where it's coming from. What is inspiring you to feel that way? What does it give you the desire to do? I mean, it could be giving you the desire to, I don't know, to eat like tropical fruit. You know, that within itself has, you know, it's a zest to that. There's something about life forms that come from sunny climates. It could be that you are driven by sexual desire. It could be that you are driven to create, to co-create. Could be that you just want to go sit outdoors at a terrace of a cafe and have a beer or whatever, you know. Those are all these shifts of the Knight of Wands. The Knight of Wands is swift and determined and inspired and vibrant and, you know, a little cocky, a little, sure of himself and or herself, and determined. And I mean, we get that with Judgment, which is the rebirth card. You know, it is literally as if we're waking from a slumber. And ironically, you know, it's clarified by the Ten of Wands, which in the Botticelli deck actually serves us perfectly to make this point. Because look at that person. This is actually, I'm taking as clarifier of what we're leaving behind. The Ten of Wands is when we get to that point on our journey where, you know, we've gone from, you know, ouch. I'm sorry, I'm getting itchy eyes for some reason. All those ideas, all that conditioning, this is a person who has been conditioned to the absolute degree and has, you know, essentially grown tired of life because they don't really have, and I don't mean tired of life in like, you know, a suicidal way. I mean tired of life in the sense that, you know, maybe they're just a little bit actually stuck in that Nine of Pentacles energy where they're just like satiated and like, well, I can't really be bothered with anything else. It's like, I'm done. I'm like, this is cool. You know, I'm gonna rest on my laurels. There's nothing left for me to do. All the wands are there. Well, Judgment is the divine intervention of rebirth saying, no, guess what's gonna happen? New things are going to come along right now that you have never experienced before, or you're going to experience them in ways that you've never experienced before, and you're going to be challenged to go back to an Ace of Wands and have just one wand of divine inspiration to move you forward onto a new journey. And it's victorious. Remember, this is all our present energy. So all of that boisterous, fun energy that we are taking into the outside world in Aries season it's working for us. You know, we're seeing tangible results. We're seeing this manifest in ways that we're being celebrated in our environment. Maybe we're just celebrating ourselves if we don't have a lot of other people around us, but you know, still it's like a great feeling when, you know, you want to dance in front of that mirror. You want to, you know, maybe you don't embrace your body and, you know, you get in your bra and panties and you like stand in that mirror and like you let it all jiggle and you own it and you enjoy it, and that's your Six of Wands victory, you know? I mean, of course it can go to the opposite extreme where it's that you find yourself on a fucking billboard, you know, for all I know. But the likelihood is that it's how you celebrate yourself, and people celebrate you when you celebrate yourself, just because, you know, when you're in your victory and your self-confidence, it's contagious, you know? It's clarified by the Hermit. So interestingly, you know, the idea of that, it's really about also, you know, as we expand in the external world, as we our individuation process on this new journey begins, we also have the benefit of our inner sanctum that we've built. So that Hermit card as a clarifier on the Six of Wands is basically saying we don't actually need the egoic validation that the Six of Wands traditionally represents. Yes, we're proud of our accomplishment. We're happy to be who we are now externalizing ourselves as being. But at the same time, we do it for ourselves, for our own inner balance and expansion and spiritual drive, if that makes sense. That's really what's coming to me. And then moving into our future energies, we have, again, the Wheel of Fortune. This time clarified by the Ace of Swords. So it's interesting because, that Wheel of Fortune comes, right below the present Wheel of Fortune that was with the Knight of Wands. So the Knight of Wands holds that Ace of Wands, the drive and determination of the inspired, youthful, passion flow. That's shifted in us, in our present. And then what we take that into is a philosophical truth, to live our lives by. It's where we intellectually expand into a new process as well. So a lot of sort of new flow, but from the beginning, which makes sense. We had the Fool last week. We are all I can hear is shifting seasons. It's the shifting seasons, the representation here. We're not talking about massive reinvention of who we are, but it's that understanding that the seasons represent life, right? So we change with the seasons in order to give ourselves the opportunities and the experiences that we need to keep upgrading and learning, in that chariot flow, of the idea of the divine masculine and feminine coming together to push the chariot forward, and then in turn, having the process of the experience going into the subconscious mind being processed to then in turn inform who we are, who we will become, and who we will become will be expressed consciously out into our chosen experiences. Now, with this coming Ace of Swords shift of destiny, shift of seasons, comes the Page of Cups. Now, the Page of Cups is the emotional student. This is, being receptive to what life has to offer us emotionally. Now, it's a very youthful energy. It's exactly what I talked about earlier on when we were talking about what, when we're young, we have a different approach to love, to relationship, because we are not jaded by our hurts and, and the baggage and the things that we haven't been able to process, and when we've got caught in our ego, so we're not able to actually separate the truth of the experience from the way that we, our trauma, our pain body, internalized it. So all of this shifting is allowing us to let go of that, which of course is going to make us lighter, more buoyant, more able to flow into new emotional experiences. Again, remember, I know it's a lot of pressure in a time where people are still living under lockdowns and turmoil and chaos in our society and civilization. So for those of you who are not able to externalize that with other people, and you're not feeling, I never want to make people feel isolated or alienated or frustrated that they're not going to be able to have social experiences of these. This can be the experience that you have with yourself, the most important relationship you'll ever have, right? Because you're always there. You can always depend on yourself. You can always disappoint yourself too if you don't pay attention to your self-care, So this is really, again, like that image that I have of us all dancing around in our underwear in front of the mirror. That's what the Page of Cups is. The Page of Cups falls in love with himself. And not in, again, that tarnished, Trumpist, narcissistic personality disorder way that we've all been gaslit into assuming that self-love is all about. It's not that. It's good to see yourself in the mirror and accept yourself and love yourself as you are and shake it all about and jump, squat, and shake your titties or whatever else you want to do. That's a good thing. That's what then makes everything else easy and shine, So it can be that. It's taking ownership of that. That's what that Ace of Swords is. That's what the philosophy is. That's what the intellectual leap of faith onto a new pathway is with that Wheel of Fortune. It's throwing caution to the wind, really, in self-acceptance and self-love. Because that's the only way that you're going to ever attract anybody else into your life anyway, I mean, you can bond with somebody over your traumas, but trauma bonding is something that eventually you have to rise above, and you have to find other core connections with people beyond trauma bonding. So we're way beyond that, right? Let's be honest. And it was clarified by the Strength card. So again, that self-love is what gives us the strength to be the social animal that we are meant to be. So let all of this happen. That's maybe what that Patience card is. It's like, let all of this happen. Fall in love with yourself this week. I know that's a lot of pressure. Hopefully, you're pretty close anyway. But that's what you want to do. And other shit is going to just come, If you don't fall in love with yourself, then you're always at loggerheads with everything around you. And you're always going like, I don't really want that because it might lead to this. And what if this happens and I'm not in control of this and I can't, I've got to block. You don't want to do that. You want to be in flow. This is all coming to me like from somewhere else. It's not. That doesn't even make sense in terms of these cards. Well, it does, but I could have interpreted them a totally different way. I'm just telling you that because I don't know why. Because that's what's coming out of me. Okay. Our conclusion for this, again, very interesting. Right below the other Six of Wands and Hermit card, we get the Hermit from the Rider-Waite with the Four of Swords. Now, I know exactly what this means. Again, we talked about how, that the false victory of the ego in that Six of Wands that you could fall into, we are no longer falling into that trap. Any victory that we have in the outside world gives us protection in our inner sanctum. It reinforces our ability to actually thrive, grow in self-love. And in this case, we've got the Hermit, which again is about our self-love and our inner journey and carrying that inner light within in order to be able to guide ourselves forward, listening to our inner guidance, and also guide others by leading by example. But the Four of Swords in this case is purely about being healed. It's not about going into a process of healing. We've been there. That's what getting to the self-love through self-care really is all about. This is the confirmation of your crown of, well, I'm going to pretend I have a big rubber stamp right now, and your forehead is right there. Boom! Healed. You're healed. Are you ready to actually show the world that you're healed now? It's a nice feeling, right? You can own that now. I know you've done the work. If you've been watching these videos, I know you've done the work because you've been on the journey with me, and we've worked fucking hard. And now it's about allowing that flow of love. And if we can do that, I think we're all going to be really surprised at just how much love flows our way. Just how much easier everything is. Forget about, sickness and vaccines and blah, 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 blah. I will tell you that my vaccine continued to fuck with me all week long. I had horrible, horrible side effects from it. But I got it anyway. And I'm still on my spiritual journey. I haven't turned into a zombie, and I have not, died. And do what you will with that information. But I'm just saying that you can still maintain your spiritual path and get the vaccine. And still be cynical about it. Because you're a sovereign spiritual being who has the capacity for self-love, and then in turn, infinite love of everything around you. Which means that stupid bullshit like shifts in ideology and government policy and whatever else, they're like little buzzing, annoying mosquitoes and flies that, who cares, I guess you could get malaria and die. Unless you got hydrochloroquine. I am so funny. It's my own version of some kind of surreal, twisted stand-up comic routine that I'm not delivering with the kind of passion that would actually make anybody laugh. But maybe you laughed anyway because you've gotten to the point where you're just like, yeah, Alex, you're fucking nuts. And you love me for it, let's be honest. Okay, one last card. Our Osho Zen Tarot. And as I say, take the book ending. We start with that conditioning card, the Devil card, and we end with the Inner Voice card, which I think is the Empress. I always get confused. It's both of them are major arcana cards, so that's a big deal within itself. So, the Fool, Magician, Empress. Yeah, okay, so. Take a look at it. The inner voice speaks not in words, but in the wordless language of the heart. It is like an oracle who only speaks the truth. If it had a face, it would be like the face at the center of this card. It's not me. This card, see here. Alert, watchful, and able to accept both the dark and the light, symbolized by the two hands holding the crystal. The crystal itself represents the clarity that comes from transcending all dualities. And I'm thinking it's very interesting because, we had that Two of Pentacles at the beginning of the reading from our past, and then we're talking about moving into acceptance of both the dark and the light, and that is sort of transcending that juggling energy of the Two of Pentacles, right? What was I saying? The crystal itself represents the clarity that comes from transcending all dualities. The inner voice can also be playful as it dives deep into the emotions and emerges again to soar towards the sky. Like two dolphins dancing in the waters of life, it is connected with the cosmos through the crescent moon crown, and the earth as represented by the green leaves on the figure's kimono. There are times in our lives when too many voices seem to be pulling us this way and that. Our very confusion in such situations is a reminder to seek silence and centering within. Only then are we able to hear our truth. And, eliminating that duality is also about coming into self-love, because self-love is the ultimate transcendence of duality and conditioning, because it's recognizing our unique value beyond all of that, right? If you have found your truth within yourself, there is nothing more in the world. I'm going to start again. If you have found your truth within yourself, there is nothing more in this whole existence to find. Truth is functioning through you. When you open your eyes, it is truth opening his eyes. Not sure why truth is a he, but whatever. When you close your eyes, it is truth who is closing its eyes. Okay, so it's an it now. This is a tremendous meditation. If you can wait, what is the meditation? When you close your eyes, it's truth who's closing its eyes. When you open your eyes, it's truth opening its eyes. This is a tremendous meditation. Did it look good? Was that a tremendous meditation? I'm not sure. If you can simply understand the device, you don't have to do anything. Whatever you are doing is being done by truth. You are walking, it is truth. You are sleeping, it is truth. Resting is truth resting, okay? It is truth speaking. You are silent, it is truth that is silent. I think I botched that, but you know what I'm saying. Basically, truth is everything. That's all you need to know. If I throw this card in the air, and it fell on the floor, whoop, that's truth. Throwing a card in the air. This is one of the most simple meditation techniques. Slowly, everything settles by this simple formula, and then there is no need for the technique. When you are cured, you throw away the meditation, you throw away the medicine. Then you live as truth, alive, radiant, contented, blissful, a song unto yourself. Your whole life becomes a prayer without any words, or better to say, a prayerfulness, a grace, a beauty, which does not belong to our mundane world, a ray of light coming from the beyond into the darkness of our world. And it really gives me the urge to sing that song. I finally found someone, but I don't remember all the lyrics, so I'm just gonna sing the chorus. This is it. Oh, I finally found someone to something. Well, I guess it's really within, right? I know, that wasn't the best rendition of a song you've ever heard. I'm very nasal. It's from having my massage with my head down. Can't really sing. And that's all about romantic love anyway. But, I guess finding the one could also be finding yourself. And then that takes me to that Christina Aguilera song, The Voice Within. Find the voice within. Go listen to all those sappy songs. They may inspire you. But in the meantime, I hope you found this message interesting. It wasn't as straightforward in many ways, because I think that we're all still pretty resistant to the notion of love, mostly because I think we get so stuck in the concept of romantic love. And we know how that's fucked us over so many times in our lives. And so it's hard to really understand that we're conditioned to think of love as being that. But again, maybe that's the greatest meditation. Or maybe that's what that last card about the inner voice was really all about. It's like, what is love? I don't know. Namaste. Have a wonderful week. Really, infinite blessings to you. And just be in love with yourself to start, right? Okay. Bye. I said bye. Look, the colors are all changing. Everything's going purple.